Even before last week's long-awaited Mueller hearings, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was keen to avoid the subject of impeachment, even if she still hasn't officially taken it off the table.
We have 6 committees that are working on following the facts in terms of any abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and the rest that the president may have engaged in.
Then we actually heard from the former special counsel, and while he did reaffirm the most troubling findings in the report, he seemed to talk more about what he wouldn't talk about.
I'm just going to refer you to the report, if I could. I refer to the report on that episode. I'm not going to get into that at this juncture. I'm not going to get into that.
And now at least some of Pelosi's committee chairs seem to be considering action.
We may decide to recommend articles of impeachment at some point. We may not. That remains to be seen.
But while the House remains divided, the number of Democrats supporting an impeachment inquiry grows, including with several members of the Massachusetts delegation. One of them, Congresswoman Lori Trahan, joins me now. Congresswoman, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
What did you learn from the Mueller hearings that you didn't know before that caused you to take the position you did?
So I think the Mueller hearing was an important milestone because it was his opportunity to speak directly to the American people. I mean, there's no question he's a man of integrity and objectivity. And, you know, what he was able to tell everyone was that the Attorney General misrepresented the findings of his report, that he absolutely has ample evidence of obstruction of justice, that he never exonerated the president.
But you knew that from the Mueller
We did know
report,
that. Yeah, absolutely. We knew that from reading the report, which is the reason why impeachment was always on the table for me. In fact, the week prior to his testimony, I had voted against tabling the motion for impeachment. But it is really important that, you know, folks hear. They hear from him directly. And so
had you decided before, but you decided to announce it after he spoke, or you waited until you heard him say what he said?
You know, we were clearly leaning in the direction of impeachment. You know, I think with the continuation of this administration to not show up for investigative hearings, to not comply with subpoenas, I mean, all of that was a buildup. But yeah, I mean, the fact that he said in plain English that this president could be charged when he leaves office, that, you know, that this authority rests with Congress because he didn't believe that he could charge the president.
But we knew that from the report too.
Absolutely.
I know you support an inquiry now. Do you support impeachment of the president? An inquiry is one thing.
Yeah.
Impeachment is another. Do you support that?
So I think starting an impeachment proceeding, I think, just accelerates our ability to get to the truth, right? And I think that's what we need, you know, to do. I would argue that because the investigations across these committees have been obstructed by the administration and we haven't been able to get so many people to appear, that the focus of having an impeachment proceeding is the right next step. But I'll tell you, you know, I was a staffer during the Clinton impeachment. I mean, I know
Congress.
I was a staffer down in Washington then, and I know exactly how disruptive this process is going to be. So it's not a position I came to lightly because, you know, I talk to constituents every day who, you know, want, while we're defending our democracy, but also get things done.
But I want to be clear here. Again, an inquiry is one thing. At the end of it, today, do you support impeachment of the President of the United States?
Yeah, I think that I think an impeachment proceeding is actually going to build a very strong case.
And you support his impeachment?
Yes, I would. Yeah.
Dan Coe, the guy who came in a very close second to you, wrote an op-ed, I think it was in the Lowell Sun, right about that time, urging you to take this action. Did that factor into your decision at all?
Not any more than any other constituent that called my office. You know, we've been monitoring those calls and those, you know, those letters and emails.
How do you explain to a constituent who says, let me see if I understand this properly? Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, says regularly the guy self-impeaches himself all the time. He has committed impeachable offenses. Yeah. But because of her political concerns about what the impact will be next November, we shouldn't do this. He is impeachable and has committed offenses that are impeachable, but we're not going to do it for politics. How do you explain that to a constituent?
Well, I think what I try to tell constituents is that I sit in the caucus every single week, a couple times a week. And what I know that we're unified on is getting to the truth, right? I mean, reasonable people could disagree right now on whether starting an impeachment proceeding will accelerate this process more than the 5 investigations across committees of jurisdiction that we already have in place. I happen to be of the mindset that the impeachment proceeding will. It will focus the country on it, and it will also yield the facts that will make it more self-evident in terms of, the impeachment.
Well, let me put it another way. If this man is not impeachable, who is impeachable? How do you? I would love to ask Nancy Pelosi that question. How would she answer that question?
I think she would agree that this is an important time because no president, not this one, not the next one, is above the law.
Except this one is, according to her.
I think that she's trying to build. I mean, I'm not going to speak for the Speaker of the House,
I had a feeling
but I think she's in the very different position of having to build a very strong case, right? I mean, I think in her mind she's thinking through an impeachment vote in the Senate is not likely, and this president getting exonerated once again is just it's so damaging to our democracy, and it's so damaging to next year.
Can we move from Washington to the southern border? You were there in early July with Ayanna Pressley, Joe Kennedy, both of whom were here recently talking about it. Can you give us you have young kids, which must make it even more painful. Can you give me your quick reaction to what you saw?
It was devastating. I mean, I hearken back during our orientation. I got to see Brian Stevenson, who writes so much and helps so much getting wrongly convicted felons on death row, bringing justice to them. And he would regularly say, you have to be willing to be in close proximity to the people who are most in pain if you're going to fight injustice. And that's exactly why I went down to the border. I had to see it for myself, and it was heartbreaking because even though I didn't see the overcrowdedness that was reported just 2 weeks prior to my visit, I saw how we treated the people that we did have there. I mean,
how do we treat the people we had there?
So, there were 2 little, I'll never forget, the 2 little girls that I saw who were suffering from the flu. No bed, no blankets, no mom, no parents, drinking Kool-Aid, I want
to put up your tweet. You tweeted, I don't know if you tweeted more than once, but read part of your tweet. Toddlers quarantine 8x10 rooms, sleeping on the floor with the flu. Your last line is, our system is broken, I won't stop until it's fixed. I don't question that. But the Democrats had a bill to deal with the migrant detention that they had to pull, I think it was on Thursday, not because of the Republicans, but because the Democrats couldn't agree with the Democrats in the House. How pathetic is that? You have a majority there, and you can't even, I don't mean you personally, you collectively can't even act because of your internal disagreements.
I think that bill needed a bit more work. We are a very diverse caucus, right? We've got very strong progressive voices in our caucus. We've got very strong, new Dems in our caucus, or frontliners, and that bill, I think, just needed more input. But you're right. I mean, look, I was frustrated because my legislation that I filed, which was simple, it was a simple accountability measure about stopping migrant deaths. I mean, the last thing we want to see is, 9 migrant deaths turn into 15 or 20. And so just the notification process, where Congress is notified within 24 hours, made it into the bill, but the automatic hearing that would go with it and should go with it is right now not in the bill. So this actually gives me another opportunity to get that piece in the bill, because I think it's important.
But it's still 6, 8, 10 more weeks before it's even considered, and those kids are living just like you described. Congresswoman, you haven't been here since the Globe and some campaign finance groups were raising issues about some of your fundraising in the final phase of your campaign. The issue was, did the money that you used to buy ads come from a personal account, which is perfectly legal, or from other accounts, which would be illegal? Your contention is you just made some rookie filing mistakes. Is that a fair statement? Is that where you are, and that everything else is on the up and up?
Well, yeah. I think what I want folks to know is that I had ample resources to make the loan to my campaign, and there was nothing surprising about when that loan was made. I actually held onto my resources because I was so severely outspent until the last 4 weeks of the campaign. But this notion that I personally did not have the funds to make that loan to my campaign are just inaccurate. Through
Why
my
don't you really,
income,
if that's the case, to put it to bed, why don't you just release bank statements or and checks that show, if it's as you say, that all the money came from your personal or joint accounts? Why not just do that and everything goes away?
You know, we've done that on our financial disclosure forms, our personal financial. We've complied with all of those regulations. I mean, I showed that that my money came from a joint checking account, and it also came from a home equity loan that I gave to my campaign. So we'll continue. And should the Federal Election Commission, look to see, where those funds came from, I think they're going to see that, just in the 2 years leading up to my taking office, I made $630,000. This is not.
Can I ask you one last money thing before you go? This morning we read in the paper that $143 million settlement, Merrimack Valley over the pipeline explosions, that's on top of the money that went to the family of the young man who incredibly lost his life. I know you filed a bill with Senator Markey about raising the fines dramatically. Are you satisfied with this settlement of these cases? Is this a decent settlement?
Yeah, I think it's. We're monitoring it closely to make sure that all the plaintiffs are satisfied. I think that we're always on call helping families and small businesses. This notion that everything is going to be cured with a settlement is just not true. So one thing that I like to take the opportunity to remind people is go to Lawrence, Andover, and North Andover and give your dollars and your support to these local businesses, these bodegas, these restaurants, and these stores, because they are still feeling the pinch of not having that foot traffic that they had 2 years ago.
But your initial reaction to this is a reasonable settlement.
Yeah, and I think we're going to monitor it to make sure that each of those families and businesses are satisfied. But
Lori
so far,
Trahan,
so good.
It's great to see you. Thank you so much for your
Thanks
time.
so much,
Really
Jim.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
Congresswoman Trahan.